Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Harness Your ADHD podcast. My name is Gia. I'm a personal trainer, a yoga instructor, and I also have ADHD. Thank you guys so much for joining me again today and to learn more about your wonderful brains. So I really appreciate you guys being here again for the fifth episode. You can hear birds and dogs in the background. Sorry about that. I'm outside at the moment. We've had like horrible weather for the past week, so I am soaking up the sun as much as I can. Anyways, today's episode is all about the M word, meditation. So I know I can hear like everyone's like collective sighs now, like, oh my God, she's going to talk about meditation. I get it. I totally get it. But I promise you, if you listen to me and listen to the end, you'll be pleasantly surprised with what you might hear. So the episode will go over what exactly meditation actually is, bust some, myths about meditation, talk about why it's so good but so fucking hard for us to do it, talk a little bit about mindfulness versus meditation, as well as usual, some practical tips and suggestions on how you can get started into a meditation practice. So, what exactly is meditation? I know that I personally had some preconceived notions about meditation and what exactly it was, and it actually stopped me from even trying. So, let's talk about it. Meditation is defined as a systematic mental training designed to challenge habits of attending, thinking, feeling, and perceiving. So, essentially, the idea is that attention, just like any muscle, needs to be trained if we want it to be strong and available to us when we need it. And so meditation is training our brain to sustain attention, minimize distractions, have better self-monitoring, and better ability to redirect our focus, which happens to be the exact skills us with ADHD tend to struggle with a little bit. Basically, if you want your brain to get better at paying attention, the best way to get better at it is to practice paying attention, just like any other muscle. So the whole goal of meditation isn't to clear your mind or to relax or to keep your thoughts still, which sounds kind of counterintuitive to what you may have heard about meditation in media or from friends. Okay, so what is the goal of meditation then? So the primary goal of meditation is actually to sit with these thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment. So the goal here is to simply observe your mind, and whenever you notice it wandering, to bring it back to your anchor. If you don't know what an anchor is, that's okay. I will explain way more in detail a little later on. I just wanted to give like a brief overview of what meditation actually is, to hopefully challenge your perhaps preconceived notions that you have of meditation. The cool thing about meditation as well is that as long as you're breathing, you can meditate. So you can access it anytime, anywhere, and I will explain a little bit later on as well, but this is really, really important for so many of our emotional regulation issues that we have. So traditional meditation as we know it has three basic steps. The first step is focusing our attention on an object or a process. So for example, following the breath or looking at a candle. And this will act as an attention anchor. So like what I was talking about a little earlier on. The next step, or our second step, involves noticing and then acknowledging the presence of distractors. So things like thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, and then learning to let go of them. So not attach to them or kind of take them on board or go into that sort of thought loop or thought spiral. And then the last step is gently but also firmly coming back to the anchor as soon as we realize that we start to kind of play into those thoughts or those emotions or those sensations that we are noticing. This seems super simple, right? You just sit there, notice what comes up, and then come back to paying attention to whatever we're supposed to, so our breath or whatever we're focusing on. But obviously, if you have ADHD like me and you've ever tried this, you know that it's anything but simple. I've actually collected a few quotes from some people in my life with ADHD who have tried meditation. So the first person said, "I don't like it because it makes me anxious and fidgety. Every time I've tried it, I can feel my heart rate increase and I feel like it makes me even more anxious than I was before." The next person said, "I have a lot of hyperactivity and sensory issues that make sitting still or lying still very difficult and very uncomfortable. I feel like I need some sort of like stimulation through touch or movement to be able to self-regulate." And the third person said, it's physically excruciatingly painful. I'm not kidding. I'd literally rather run a marathon than meditate. Now, I know these quotes may sound dramatic or even like a cop-out, or perhaps you're thinking, oh, these people are just lazy, they haven't tried hard enough, which if you have ADHD, I'm sure have a very visceral reaction to those words. But I'm here to tell you that you are not being sensitive or being lazy or anything like that. Meditation can physically be painful for us ADHDers. I know in my experience, when I first started out, I could not stick to a meditation practice because I literally felt like my skin, like I wanted to rip my skin off. It's such a hard experience or it's a hard feeling to explain. But it's just this horrible, visceral discomfort, almost like an impending doom feeling, like something bad is about to happen if you don't get up and do something. I think the best way I can describe it is, when you've had like a really long, hard day at work, or you've done a lot of physical activity and you're super sweaty and grimy and dirty and all you want to do is just have a shower. But I don't know, you're stuck at work or you're stuck in the car and you just have this horrible, I want to rip my skin off feeling. That's personally my experience, and I know a lot of my clients experience a similar feeling. And this can be very easily explained because at its core, ADHD is present due to dysregulated levels of dopamine. And this causes our brain to seek stimulation externally and internally. So through like physical movement or like mental hyperactivity, or like those racing thoughts. So when we're moving and thinking, our physical bodies are regulated. However, when we remove this stimulation, we start to feel that restlessness and that dissatisfaction of our dopamine levels starting to drop and dysregulate. And this explains very easily the physical pain that we feel when we try to sit still. And this has also been proven through brain scans too. So this isn't just like anecdotal evidence. There are physical studies that have mapped out the activity of our brains when someone with ADHD does try to meditate. So as we stay still and continue to try to clear our thoughts, we start to feel even more physical discomfort, and our well-meaning brains attempt to escape this physical discomfort by creating even more activity in the mind. And the fun thing about ADHD is that when we try to focus on something that we're just not interested in, our prefrontal cortex, which is underdeveloped in the first place, shuts down even more. So essentially, like, the harder we try, the worse this physical pain gets and the harder it is to focus. Side note, but I remember an experiment that was done. There was 10 participants and they were told to sit in this empty room with nothing but a button for 1 hour. And they were told if they pressed the button, they would receive a pretty painful but harmless electric shock. And if they made it the full hour, they'd receive $1,000. Interestingly, 9 out of 10 of these participants actually pressed the button within the first half hour, proving that people will choose physical discomfort over boredom. And so hopefully that explained why meditation is so hard for us, and that you take it easy on yourself for struggling with this practice, and that you don't beat yourself up. Or again, I say this in every episode, but having ADHD just comes along with so much guilt and so much shame and so many negative feelings towards ourselves. So we really don't need to be, I guess, lambasting ourselves for not being able to meditate, because our brains literally are designed to want to do the opposite. Okay, so I've talked all about why it's so hard for us to meditate, but now I want to share why it's so beneficial for us to develop some sort of meditation practice. So biochemically, it's actually quite counterintuitive that meditation has a positive effect on ADHD symptoms. To get into like a little bit of like science, so this is because theta to beta ratios are typically increased in ADHD brains, and meditation actually further increases the theta wave activity. However, mindfulness and meditation may improve symptoms not because of the quantity of brainwave activity, but more so because of the learned skill to actually control attention and focus to either a specific purpose or a specific action. So for example, like your breathing. And so this constant return to the present moment strengthens our attention muscles, which can be really helpful for obviously controlling our symptoms. Meditation has also been shown to physically change the structure and the function of our brain in ways that are directly related to ADHD, so affecting our prefrontal cortex and our default mode network. So they did a review on 13 studies involving adults with ADHD, and it suggested that mindfulness meditation training decreased symptoms of ADHD Just to give you like some easy numbers, 78% of those who participated in the study showed an average of 30% reduction in ADHD symptoms, which may not sound like a lot, but when you have ADHD, any sort of reprieve is a welcome blessing. To get into a little bit more detail, meditation fine-tunes specific circuitry in the ADHD brain, starting with the executive attention circuit, which is our front parietal circuit. It is also like known as the conflict monitoring and resolution part of our brain. So the function can be kind of viewed as self-awareness. So it stops us from making rash decisions and by reducing our impulsivity. And it also helps us make decisions amongst like conflicting choices or conflicting stimulus. So for example, here's a practical example. When we're holding a chocolate bar in one hand and an apple in the other, our executive attention circuit helps us choose the apple over the chocolate bar if we're conscious about our health. Meditation has been shown to improve the executive attention circuit, which affects our brain areas in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the basal ganglia, which are two areas that help us choose between which stimuli we are perceiving and which stimuli we react to, alongside behavioral control. So next up, we have our sustained attention circuit, which of course describes our ability to stay focused on one thing for a sustained period of time. And this has a direct effect, obviously, on our performance. So obviously not being able to sustain our attention leads to extreme mental fatigue, poor follow through, and just general disorganization and scatterbrainedness. Meditation helps to improve this sustained attention circuit by recruiting brain regions involved with sustaining attention. So it activates the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and increases the functional connectivity within the brain. Basically, that's just like a bunch of fancy ways to say that things just flow smoothly there. The third circuit is our impulsivity circuit, which is, bear with me with this one, corticostriatal thalamocortical circuit, the CSTC for short. So the job of our CSTC is to connect cognitive, motor, and habit-based brain areas together. So with ADHD, this is obviously an issue because we can easily get stuck in these kind of repeating loops of stagnant brain activity. And this leads to repetitive, distracting thoughts and difficulty inhibiting these destructive behaviors or kind of like stopping these behaviors. So think about things like rumination, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, or even just like having random songs and quotes kind of stuck in your head, looping over and over. And this also manifests as impulsive behavior and poor emotional control and regulation. And so meditation teaches us the incredible, invaluable skill of the ability to pause before we notice an emotion or a feeling and just observe it versus acting on it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And lastly, we have the hyperactivity circuit, which is also affected by our CTSC. And this is like via motor areas of the brain, which lead to constant movement, and this can manifest in many different ways, physical and mental hyperactivity. So mental hyperactivity talks about rumination, anxiety, and those kinds of things. So meditation activates the medial prefrontal cortex, which is involved in decision-making and memory, and then also the posterior cingulate cortex, which is related to the memory, self-awareness, and self-control area of our brain. Meditation also allows us to have just a better relationship with ourselves in general. We can struggle with things like interoception, which is our ability to kind of tell what our body wants for us. So think like hunger, thirst, needing to go to the toilet, being tired. And by giving us stillness to sit with, we're able to tune into our bodies and be able to see what it truly needs from us. And so the more time that we spend with ourselves with minimal distraction, the more we can learn to work with our bodies and not against it. And it's honestly, anecdotally, it's a really beautiful thing to experience, to be able to like witness your body asking for something, providing your body that need, and then observing how your body thanks you afterwards. It's a really beautiful process. So I really encourage you guys to try and make it through this episode so that you can experience this. And also this non-judgmental orientation of the mindfulness practice really just helps us reduce our self-criticism and our perfectionistic tendencies overall. Okay, so we've established that this shit is hard for us, but is also really good for us. So how are we going to be able to benefit from meditation if we have all these things kind of working against us? And so with ADHD, having to do anything that we don't like doing or we don't want to do or we find boring can genuinely be like a physically painful experience. And so what happens is we subconsciously create this coping mechanism and essentially dissociate from what we're doing, just to make it a bit more bearable for us. I know a practical example for me is I used to really hate cleaning, and I would literally just chuck headphones in and just zone out just to be able to get through it. But the problem is that when the ADHD brain does register discomfort, dysregulation, or pain, it overcompensates this by masking discomfort through hyperactivity in the mind. And obviously this becomes maladaptive when it bleeds over into other areas of our life, when we find ourselves dissociating and getting that head noise from environments where we actually want to be paying attention. So a friend is talking to us, or we're watching a movie or something like that. So essentially, the ADHD brain uses our thoughts to escape uncomfortable feelings or tasks. So we need to compassionately teach our brain to be able to draw ourselves back to the task and ultimately rewire our brain with a whole new range of like self-regulatory skills. If you can find benefit from the traditional style of meditating, so sitting or lying in silence, focusing on your breath, then great. Absolutely do that. I have no issue with that at all. However, a lot of people with ADHD just find this impossible, and that's when you hear people say, well, I've tried meditating and it just didn't work for me. And that's totally fair, to be honest. However, again, if you find that it's not working for you, or it's just really overwhelming, I find a lot of my ADHD clients say that they found it to be way too overwhelming at first. So because of that, I'd like to introduce you to the concept of mindfulness. So essentially it has the same benefits as meditation. However, unlike meditation, which enforces kind of this strict focus, mindfulness practice recognizes and understands that attention is going to wander for everybody, and it's our job to become more aware of it in real time as it's happening, versus trying to just quiet the mind in general. So observing versus doing or fixing something. The really cool thing about mindfulness too is there are so many ways to practice it. You don't even really need to be like doing anything or set anything up or have any, equipment or props, or even have to like separate yourself or excuse yourself from whatever you're doing. To practice mindfulness, all you really need to do is just bring your attention to whatever you're currently doing. So coming out of your head and settling into your body. Sensory observation is a super simple, externally oblivious, and accessible way to practice mindfulness. All it is just noticing what's in front of you and what's around you, using your 5 senses as an anchor. So for example, right now, I'm sitting in my room as I'm writing this script and recording this podcast, and I can see all these beautiful plants I have around me with all these unique markings and unique colorings, and no 2 leaves are the same. I can smell the tea that's sitting next to me, and it's a chai tea, so it smells warm and cinnamony, and I can feel the fabric of my trackies against my legs. It's super soft and super comfortable. I can taste the mint flavor of the gum that I was chewing about an hour ago, and I can hear the chirps of the birds and the whiz of the cars outside my window, and the contrast of those sounds are quite amusing to me. So you see what I just did? That is mindfulness. It's really as simple and as difficult as that. And so you can see you can do this whenever, wherever you are. Other forms of mindfulness include yoga and stretching, doing like creating or doing any art of any sort. I personally like doing those like adult coloring books, gardening, walking, any sort of exercise in general can be really mindful, as long as you're paying attention to what you're doing and not distracting yourself with your phone or anything like that. Cooking, cleaning, and reading as well. These are all ways that you can learn to be more present in your everyday lives. And so we've finally reached the end of it. Thank you so much for sticking with me. To finish up, I just wanted to share a few more tips on how you can cultivate and continue your meditation or your mindfulness practice. So as with any new habit, having a goal is important, but you want to make that goal realistic. In fact, make it overly realistic. So if you think you can commit to 15 minutes every day, start with 5 or 10. And then, if you're in the moment and you want to go for a little bit longer, absolutely. Something to note is that you really only need about 15 minutes of meditation a day to be able to see benefits. So if you feel like, that 5 or 10 minutes, it's not going to do anything, I'm not even going to bother, think again. Anything, like I say this all the time, but anything is always better than nothing. So 5 minutes is going to be so beneficial for you. I tell all my ADHD clients to schedule their meditation sessions into their calendar, like they would say like a doctor's appointment or a hair appointment, because this helps build the habit in the beginning. It just gives you one less thing to think about as well. We always, want to find ways to be able to reduce our mental load. Creating little mindfulness reminders in your day-to-day routine will also help you become mindful a lot quicker as well. So adding alarms or reminders every 2 hours in your phone that say mindful moment, or something more direct like notice what sounds you can hear for a minute. Actually, I just remembered I had a client who had this really awesome idea of like sticking post-it notes and putting them like all the places that she is the most often. So like at her office, at her office desk, in her bedroom, on mirrors, where she's cooking. And she writes on them like mindfulness checkpoint. And the fact that she almost kind of like gamified it made it really fun for her as well. Post-it notes are honestly, like, side note, but post-it notes are like the ADHD like mecca. Next time you're at the shops, go buy yourself a stack of post-it notes because you will need them. They make your life so much easier. Anyways, back to what I was actually talking about. Creating a ritual around meditating can also really help signal to your brain to become more present, and can make meditation a little bit easier as well. So smells actually work the best in this regard. So lighting a candle or putting a diffuser on, or even like meditating in your garden, where you can like smell the flowers, can be really nice as well. And now, speaking of garden, being outside and meditating outside is so much easier. And it can actually make it a lot easier for you to like focus as well. Body doubling your meditation practice with a friend or a partner, doing like a guided YouTube meditation, or even going into physical meditation classes can be really a really good way to help not just build that habit for you, but for you to actually enjoy this process as well. Now, when you are actually meditating, it's important that your sensory environment is adequate. We don't want to be adding to the distractions that we're feeling. So wearing something super comfortable and definitely not overstimulating. So whatever that is to you, because obviously everyone's different. For me, a pair of trackies, a nice big oversized shirt, nothing that's like itchy or snaggy, and nothing with tags, because tags, bane of my existence. They make me irrationally angry. Making sure that you're not too hot or too cold either. You want to be comfortable. So if sitting upright hurts, you can be in whatever position you like. You can be lying down on your back, on your stomach, in your bed, whatever you like. I personally lie in savasana in my bed, because sitting is just like very uncomfortable for me most of the time. Having an anchor point, like I was talking before, will help you when you derail. So the breath is obviously a really easy anchor point. So just coming back to your breath, counting how long your inhales are, how long your exhales are. Body scans are also a really good anchor point. So starting at the top of your head and just scanning down your body and just noticing how every part of your body and every muscle feels. Mantras, and also a really good way. So having a little phrase or a quote that you repeat to yourself in your head over and over. Even just like something as a mantra of, or focusing on like the love that you have for either like yourself or the love that you have for someone that you really care about, is a really nice anchor. And I just feel like it just gives you a lot of like nice, warm, fuzzy feelings. Now, the most important tip I have for you is to be patient with yourself. Stay curious, but not judgmental in any way. We're not here to chastise ourselves. Like I said this at the start of the podcast, but we have so many external and internal sources of judgment and criticism. And I know that it's like uncomfortable, and I know that it can bring up like a lot of stuff that we've been repressing. You know, a lot of people with ADHD have had traumatic childhoods, or just have had a rough life in general. Leaning into this discomfort will actually lessen it over time. And it sounds crazy because like when you're uncomfortable, the last thing you want to do is to lean into it. You want to run away from it. And that's just a super normal adaptive survival skill that we all have kind of programmed into us. But the more that you lean into that discomfort, the less that your brain will be kind of shouting at you to recognize it. So anytime you get those judgmental thoughts, I want you to repeat to yourself a version of this phrase. Meditation is a practice. I intend to enjoy and learn from this experience. There are no wrong ways to do it, and I will refrain from grading or ranking myself because it's not a test. I'm going to say that one more time, and I just want you to like repeat it with me. Meditation is a practice. I intend to enjoy and learn from this experience. There are no wrong ways to do it. I will refrain from grading or rating myself because this is not a test. I'm going to do it one more time. Let's just do it one more time, everyone. And I want you to be actually saying this out loud, not in your head. I want you to say it out loud. Meditation is a practice. I intend to enjoy and learn from this experience. There are no wrong ways to do it, and I will refrain from grading or ranking myself because this is not a test. It's going to be hard at the start. Honestly, you may not even find it beneficial the first few times that you do it, but I encourage you to just stick with it for 14 days. After these 14 days, if you find that nothing has changed, then cool, dump it, never meditate again. But I will be very, very surprised if that's the case. And I want you to really be on the lookout for those changes that you're feeling as well. Journal them, observe them, tell a friend about them, because what you look for is what you will, like what you focus on expands, and what you look for expands as well. So really looking for those changes that you're noticing as well. But that comes to the end of it. I honestly thought this podcast would be a short one, but we're hitting the half-hour mark soon. So that wraps it all up, all about ADHD and meditation. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this kind of tedious episode. I know, like, I just remember every time someone would talk to me or try to talk to me about meditation, I would just be like, ugh, here we go again. So I really, really appreciate you sticking with me. I would love to hear about your personal journey with meditation. So if you want to go to my Instagram at GKillen, so GKILLENPT, and share your experience underneath the post of this podcast episode. I would love to hear about it. And if you would like to work with me, so on a personal training, a yoga, or an ADHD coaching basis, you can email me at gkillenpt@gmail.com, my website gkillenpt.com, or DM me at gkillenpt on Instagram. Thank you so much again for joining me today, my wonderful ladies and gents. As always, be patient with yourself, be kind to your brains, and I'll chat to you guys soon.